and welcome to the 38th episode of Recluse Horror. This is a daily horror review podcast. You may notice that I didn't say horror movie review podcast because today what I am doing is not a movie. Just a little background on the project though. Back, I think it's 305 days ago, I decided I wanted to watch and review a horror movie every single day. I have done so for the past 305 days, as I mentioned. So, most episodes I talk about two things. I talk about one movie, which I've watched that very night, and another that I've reviewed previously in text, aided of course by the text review itself. Today though, and a couple of other times actually throughout this, I've done things that weren't horror movies, even horror short films, and it's very rare. I wish I had opportunities to do it more, but this is one that I stumbled on a couple of days ago, and I just sort of became obsessed with it. So, if you caught my message on Twitter or on Facebook, I wasn't able to record as early as I usually do. Due to unforeseen circumstances. Basically, somebody was asleep in my room and somebody was asleep in the living room, and those are the two places where I can basically record. Everywhere else has crazy house sounds, and I suppose I probably could have recorded outside, but I live in a really bad neighborhood, and recording a podcast in the middle of the night with no lights on seems both terrifying in the sense of, terrifying my neighbors by somebody just talking softly near them, and also myself, because you never know who's lurking around out there. The number of times I've found people in my backyard whom I didn't know is shocking. But anyway, so the thing that I'm going to talk about today, it's a YouTube series of what one might call LPs or Let's Play videos for a PlayStation 1 game called Petscop. Now, for any of you who are already familiar with that name, you could probably just turn this off. I'm not going to give very much information. If you've listened to this show before, you know that I am not big on spoilers, and I am not going to reveal any of the information that you already know. I'm not going to discuss any sort of theories that I might have or anything like that, because it's just not what I do here. So I'm not going to have any new information for anybody, unless you didn't know that they've started releasing new videos. So if you didn't know, there is an 11 and a 12. If you are not familiar with Petscop, you can listen to this. And, one thing I should note, the Petscop videos should probably not be watched by people who are sensitive to implied, violence towards children, or really a lot of other things. This is, mind you, none of this is actually shown in the videos. There is definitely implications throughout the videos themselves that are more than creepy, but these videos are also strongly linked to a real live case that I won't talk about. But if you can probably, most people I would think, even if you're not big on the whole implied violence towards children thing, I think you'd be able to get through the Petscop videos themselves. But if you dig deeper into the information, you're gonna find information about this case that this game is sort of linked to, and you're not gonna like what you find. So just, be aware of all of that information going into it. So, the Petscop videos. Back in April of last year, very close to when I started doing this podcast, I think it was just slightly before, like a week before I started, not doing this podcast, but doing this project when I started doing my text reviews. I think they started the week before I did. This person that the audience can only assume is named Paul started releasing videos of this very strange PlayStation 1 game that he had found, stating basically that this was proof that the game that he was talking about was real, because it sounds like utter nonsense, and he was trying to prove to someone that it was real by, releasing these videos. Now, just to start off with this, it's pretty clear, and everybody who knows anything about this has pretty much come to the conclusion that the person that is referred to as Paul, who is the player of the game and the narrator of the videos, in a sense, probably created these videos and the game himself. Definitely the videos, probably the game. And I don't really think that's relevant. I don't think it takes away from what this person is doing. It's a very strange game. Basically, the premise of what appears to be the overarching sort of game is something like I don't want to say it, but it's kind of like a Pokemon thing, where you want to catch these things that they call pets using basically puzzle-solving sort of things. It takes place in this very bright and cheerful world, but the game itself is unfinished. There's only one of what would probably be a number of different worlds that exist. If you go any further past that, the game just ends. There's like a walkway and then it goes into nothing. But yeah, so the first video goes over basically this person talking, see, I told you this is real, whatever, something like that. And then goes into the one and only level of the game, or what appears to be the one and only level of the game, and goes and shows the audience the different ways he's figured out how to catch these things, because like I said, it does require some puzzle solving, and he's done some of this clearly off camera. So, partway through the video, he says that there was a note attached to the game, or that he found with the game in some manner, that said basically if you go to this certain room in the finished world, or what actually is the playable world, and input this code, it'll take you into another world. And this is where the real game starts getting really crazy. He's taken into a much darker world with that just doesn't feel like a PlayStation 1 game. The music cuts out. Everything starts going crazy and getting really, really creepy. Now, one of the things that I thought was unique about this video series, I mean, there are tons of things. I could talk about this for like 15 hours. As can, I think, anybody who's had any real experience with these videos, honestly. These videos do not try to trick you into jump scares. They don't go for any easy, sort of horror-y vibes. It's all just very unsettling, and it builds and builds and builds the longer that you watch, and the more you start to connect the disparate parts of the game, and start to figure out, who you think a certain character is, or anything like that. It's exactly the sort of horror that I really enjoy. Stuff where it starts to build over time, and you just keep the things that don't feel right, keep adding up and adding up and adding up and adding up. At first you're probably able to convince yourself, I mean, putting yourself into the reality of somebody actually playing this game, at least, you'd start to think, oh, well, this stuff is probably just glitches, not everything was programmed into the game and everything. And then it becomes clear that all of this stuff kind of has to be intentional in some way, or much of it has to be intentional, at least. And then you start thinking, like, why would anybody program this? Especially, back in the PlayStation era, this was not a game style that existed. In the PlayStation 1 era, this sort of game did not exist. There's a lot of weird, funky things with time. There are a number of characters who are referenced, and there are a number of characters that appear to be, different names for multiple characters and all of these crazy things. It's unlike anything I've ever seen before. Now, I've seen this name show up a few times before. I try to avoid Reddit just because I'm one of those people who can really get sucked into a rabbit hole on something. I do it with true crime podcasts. I do it with, any weird conspiracy theory stuff about, or not conspiracy theory stuff, but stuff with like horror movie curses, or like, why was something so bad, or, why did something not work? This seems like a great idea, whatever. I get sucked into these things, and Reddit is like the place where my brain goes to die. I will spend hours and hours and hours digging into something that I have no intention of like really committing myself to researching myself, but I will go down the rabbit hole and read every single theory attached to something and just let that fester in my mind. And a lot of these things, they don't have solutions. If they have a solution, that's totally fine. I can go and I can get the solution and I can be like, that's neat. And that's sort of what the video that I initially saw involving Petscop really was. And it makes sense. As I've mentioned before, basically the only thing that comes up on my YouTube suggestions is Crypt TV videos and, actually there's one other type of video, but that's something else. But, basically it's Crypt TV videos and game theory videos. And this was one of the game theory videos that came up. Like I said, I had heard of the game before. I actually think, sometime when I was really deep down another rabbit hole watching stuff, Petscop, the actual video series, might have shown up in the, suggested videos on the bottom, because I sort of remember seeing, the character and the background of the weird part of the game, and it just I didn't have any context for it, and the names of the videos are literally just like Petscop 1, Petscop 2, and I don't think this was even the first one, so I was like, I don't know what that is. But yeah, Matt Pat, from the Game Theorists, he did a video about this game, and much like he kind of does, where he tries to find solutions for things and bring conclusions to things, this video kind of does that. It talks about the game, it talks about how the gameplay goes through and what weird things are in it, and then it tells you the conclusion based on the real-life case that is most likely attached to this. Now, this real-life case, if you actually watch the videos, only scratches at the surface of what this video really is, what these video series really have to entail. There are too many things that don't fall into this category, but there are also too many things that do fall under the broader picture of this case, of the real life case that's supposed to be attached to this thing. And Matt Pat's video, not that this is a problem, and honestly, if I had just left it there, I think I would have been better off. But Matt Pat's video essentially just, said, this is the thing, this is the case, isn't that neat and kind of weird? But I still, for some reason, found myself interested in watching the videos themselves to see what other stuff was in the video, and it's so much other stuff that, like I said, that real life case, that's a fraction of what's there in that. There are some really interesting themes, some very dark themes in this, and I think even if you're not somebody who usually finds yourself watching LP videos or Let's Plays or anything like that, or if you're not somebody who finds themselves, delving too deeply into YouTube series, I think this one might appeal to you on a certain level if you can get past the fact that sometimes it takes a little while for things to happen in this. Sometimes he'll play for, 6-7 minutes and nothing will really appear that off other than just the whole fact of this thing existing. And the videos themselves, there are currently 12. The first, what people usually refer to as the first season, was 10 episodes, but just recently he released an 11 and a 12. The channel released an 11 and a 12. But most of the videos regarding this were made before those, and analyze this and talk about it. Most of the YouTube videos that exist out there were made when 10 was out and nothing else, and it had been a while since 10 had been posted. So that's where I ended up on the subreddit page. So the subreddit group is incredible for this. They've delved into so many different things here, and I again, like I said, I usually try to avoid Reddit as much as possible because it just sends me down a path I do not have the time to go. But since I was waiting on anybody in any of my recording spaces to wake up, I ended up just saying, oh, fuck it, I'm gonna go to the subreddit, and there is some incredible stuff there. You can almost fool yourself into believing they've got a lot of this information figured out already, and they very well could, but every time they release a new episode, it sort of breaks all of the stuff that, not all of the stuff, but much of the stuff that they feel like they've hammered down, like this must mean this, and this person must be this person. But yeah, it's I don't know, if you're somebody who gets yourself really tangled up in these things, if you like true crime, even though this is only very, very, very loosely classified under the true crime banner, I guess, but I think it appeals to the same sort of people, honestly, who just, if they find a mystery, they just can't leave it alone. They have to look into it, and try to analyze it and figure it out assign some meaning to something. That's what this series is, like, perfect for. Now, who is Paul? I personally have no idea. The subreddit, thankfully, because they're good people up there, have sort of put the kibosh on, like, do not dox this guy, do not try to figure out who this person is. He is a creator, just leave him alone. Even when there was even a particular post on the subreddit where they were talking about, I think Paul is from here, and then the first part of that post is like, look, I don't mean Paul as in the person that we assume created this is Paul. I mean Paul, the character in the game. The reason why they call him Paul is because that's the name that he inputs into the game, but he never specifically states his name, so it may not actually be his name. So, I don't know. Like I said, there's so many layers to this. The other thing that is really interesting about this is that in many of the videos, he's talking to somebody specifically. At first, you start to think, you start off thinking that he's talking about just the internet very broadly, or, the people on his channel or whatever saying, look, see, I found this thing, blah, 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 I told you. But it becomes clear pretty quickly that he's talking to a specific person and that these videos are made for that person and not for any other audience. Oh god, I'm just gonna talk about this thing forever. Anyway, if you're into horror, if you're into any of that stuff, I do really suggest this. As you can tell from my continuously going back and forth on all of this stuff, my brain is just bouncing around in my head at this point. I think I spent the last 4 hours on the subreddit group, just reading any kind of helpful information that I could possibly find, and all of that stuff. Once again, the warning that it does involve some very dark themes, including violence against children. So if that's something that you can't handle even in implied form, don't watch the Petscop videos. And if it's something that you can't handle when you're hearing about, things that happened in real life, then don't look up any of the analysis information at all, because you will have to hear some things that you probably can unhear. And if that's the sort of thing that sticks in your head, just don't bother with it. The graphics of these videos, are roughly PlayStation 1 era. So, I mean, obviously it's not going to be the most high res, awesome looking videos. The visuals are not made for that. And honestly, I think the low res images kind of contribute to the feeling. If you're somebody who grew up playing video games like I did, you don't see these images applied in these ways very often. So that alone makes it feel very strange very early on. The way that things happen, like the music cutting out, or just any of the many, many, many different things that happen that are just wrong in these videos are really unsettling, and it builds longer and longer. I actually thought that I hadn't really been terribly affected by these videos initially, and then after I was going through the subreddit for a few hours, I went and stepped outside to get some air. And, everything, all of any small, tiny sound that was coming from anywhere outside, I just completely jumped at it. I ended up turning on my flashlight because I thought I heard something in my yard and all of this stuff. And then I realized, no, I'm just an idiot and I'm a little freaked out by all the stuff that I'm reading and all of these things that are going on. And that, again, is something that doesn't generally happen to me. It used to happen to me when I was younger or when I hadn't seen as many horror movies and stuff. But, nowadays I pretty much take everything in stride, and this was not one of those things, at least by the time I had spent hours on the subreddit just obsessing over this thing, so. If you are interested, or if you already have seen the Petscop videos, I would highly recommend looking up, honestly, the MatPat video, the Game Theorist video is not going to help you out any, but there is a slightly longer analysis by someone whose channel, I have no idea who it is, and there are some more analyses of, like, the later episodes. There's a couple that have come up analyzing 11, and I think there's 1 or 2 on 12, but I didn't look too deeply into those because after that point I just went to the subreddit, and that's going to really be your biggest resource if you're interested in this stuff. So, yeah, so I guess that's really all I have to say about Petscop, at least all that I'm going to allow myself to say about Petscop. There's just so much to unpack and so much to talk about, and it's just not, it's not something that I want to spoil for anyone, so I'll just let you, find whatever you would like. I'm also not going to do another review today. I just think this one is a little bit different, so I'm going to just leave this one on its own. It doesn't need to be paired with a movie. It's something a little bit different. If you're interested, I think the name of the channel is just Petscop. I am not positive, but I'm pretty sure it's just Petscop. And there are, like I said, 12 videos. I'd say they average probably about 10 or 12 minutes each, somewhere in there. Some are longer and some are shorter. It just depends. I think there's one that's over half an hour, but then there's also a bunch that are like 2 minutes. So, yeah, I guess, like I said, that's all I have to say. That's Petscop from, I don't know, the game says it was 1997, and then there's another 2000 date that gets kicked around, and then the video was posted in 2017. I don't know what you want to call Petscop. But, yeah, that's my review of it. I think it's awesome, and I think that a lot of people would enjoy it, especially if you're not the sort of person who would just stumble upon this naturally. I thought it might be worth mentioning on the show, so. In lieu of any other review, I'm just gonna end the show. If you enjoyed this for whatever stupid reason, this is not a good episode. It's nothing like most of my other episodes, but I'm tired. It's like 5 a.m, so. If you enjoyed this, please rate, review, subscribe, comment, whatever it is on whatever, platform you found us. If you do not like the platform that you found us, we are also on YouTube, Player FM, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, and pretty much any podcatcher out there. The best thing that you can do to help out the show, if you're a regular listener, again, like I said, if you're not a regular listener, this is not how the show usually is. This is like usually horror movie reviews, so. But if you know somebody interested in a daily horror movie review show, then, please share it with them. If you would like to reach out to me on social media, you can do so on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And that's pretty much it, I think. Thank you for bearing with me on this one. Thank you for your patience that I had. This is probably not going to go up until way super late, even though it's probably a shorter episode. I haven't looked at my time yet. But it's probably a shorter episode than usual, and it only contains one review of what is not a horror movie. So, anyway, with that, I will bid you a good night, or a good morning, as it happens to be for me. Goodbye.